Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave and Stacie from Corn Productions, and we got Bob Mann here. Bob Mann, of course, is the co-star in Sullivan's Crossing and from both shows that we cover. And we are going to ask him plenty of questions about both shows.
Oh dear.
Bob, welcome to the channel.
How are you guys?
Oh, we're doing pretty
Good,
good.
doing good. I'm glad we could finally make this happen.
I know.
I know we've tried a couple times and life gets busy and
Look, that's how it's how it goes. It is a chase at the best of times to get anybody, I find, frankly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, you want
That's
to kick
great.
us off with some questions?
well, before we get into those two shows, you want to just
Yeah,
tell us a little bit about you? Who is Bob Mann? What do you do?
sure. Well, I'm a member of the Nova Scotia film community. I've been acting for quite a number of years now. About I guess I did my first television gig on a show called Haven in 2014. And since then I've acted in a number of television shows and movies, a few things in Ontario, but mostly things that have filmed here in Nova Scotia. I'm also a writer. I've written on a couple of series and written some short films that have been produced. And have made the festival circuit and won some awards. I compose music for television and also for small independent films and things like that. And I do some stand-up comedy, just kind of for fun in my spare time on the side. And that's sort of the main entertainment stuff I think I do. I have a whole bunch of other facets of my life, but those I think are the most relevant ones for this audience. I have
Yeah.
different things for different audiences.
Like all of the Nova Scotian talent that we've had the opportunity to speak with,
Yeah,
wear many hats. It seems
that's
like
right. Yeah.
that's how everyone up there does it.
Yeah. It's
I
just,
even know
yeah.
I even noticed some composer credits on your Internet Movie Database page.
Yeah, that's right. So I'm part of a community of people who make things, and we have I'm not sure if anybody else has mentioned this, but we have some neat sort of regional programming that gets done where people get some funding to make short form kind of television series that gets shown on Bell and also on Eastlink, and the budgets are modest, but we've made some pretty fun and interesting things. And I've been involved with in addition to my own short films and things like that, I've been involved with the King and Pawn series, which I'm not sure if I know you've had Reed Price on your show, and Reed is the lead on that, and I play a role in season two that just started, just hit Bell last week, and we filmed season three back in December, and I've written all the music and produced all the music for that show and for a couple of other series that have filmed here in Nova Scotia. So a little bit of diversity, just in case the acting ever dries up or the writing dries up, get to do a bit of music and have a good time.
Yeah. That's one of those shows that we don't have access here. We're in the States.
No,
So,
yeah, it's just for us.
yeah, it's one of those ones we'd love to see. I
Yeah,
think we
absolutely.
ever make it up to Canada for a trip, we're going to spend the whole time just watching television that we can't access here.
Well, I will say one of the fun things about this regional model that we have is that the licenses for these shows are fairly short. So after a certain period of time, which really isn't that long, Bell kind of lets go of them, and I see a moment down the road where we put our episodes of King and Pawn on YouTube, or maybe somewhere else, so that a wider audience can see it, because if between the Sullivan's Crossing community and the From community, there are a lot of actors who have
Mhm.
appeared on both shows that are in that show, and a
Right.
number of other of those regional programs. There have been a number of people who've asked about it and who've expressed an interest in seeing. And for a lot of these smaller, more modest roles in the bigger shows, those people play some bigger roles in those regional shows, and there've been a number of people who've been interested in seeing what that looks like. So yeah, I think a moment will come where you won't have to come to Canada to see some of those
Well, we
shows.
want to come to Canada
Not
anyways,
that you should. I think you
but
should. I think
it'd be great
absolutely
to
come
have
visit.
access to all of that stuff.
Yeah, that's right.
Um, so specifically, we want to talk today about both From and Sullivan's Crossing a little bit,
Sure.
as we cover both of those shows on our podcast.
Yeah.
So you played Frank Pratt on From in the first
Sure.
3 episodes. Unfortunately, he didn't make it very long.
No. No.
And then let's see, in Sullivan's Crossing, you were in 4 episodes of season 1.
That's right. Yeah.
In season 2 of Sullivan's Crossing, do you have a bigger role? Do you appear in more episodes?
I don't think I'm supposed to say.
Okay.
So because it's only just coming out. I think in
In
early
April.
April.
April
So I think there's
12th
a
or
bit of
14th.
something like that. So there's a bit of an embargo
There.
on talking about it, but I don't think that the storyline involving Maggie and her life back home in Boston is quite finished yet.
Right.
So there may be some more to come. How much of that story you will see played out in season 2? Let's just say I think there's a focus on some other things in season 2, but I suspect from what I understand you're going to see a lot more Sullivan's Crossing to come down the road. So the story's not wrapping up anytime soon.
Yeah. But I would assume we're gonna at least see your face at some point in season 2.
You might. Yeah, you
It'd
might.
be kind of weird if we didn't, I think, with where we left things, right?
Well, it might not. I mean, stories are interesting, and one of the neat things about these long form series is that you can step away from a little piece of it for a
Right.
long stretch of time and then come back to it later. And sometimes that's more interesting to an audience than just trying to keep you in every thread and every storyline being up in the air. I do think sometimes there are shows that get watered down by having too many threads to follow at the same time, and letting a couple drop for a little while you focus a little more meaningfully on a couple of the others, I think is a good thing to do. And I've certainly seen shows do that sometimes on a season by season basis. So
Mhm.
yeah, it wouldn't be completely shocking, let me just say, but no, I still think there's a lot of life left to that whole side of things.
Yeah. So yeah, in both of these cases, in both of these characters that we're
Yeah.
talking about, like they're kind of smaller roles, right? Like they're
Yeah,
smaller
sure.
characters in the overall story, but in both shows, your characters are really important catalysts for, getting the story going and for showing us where we're at in these worlds. And I don't know if there's a question in here anywhere, but in both cases, like your character is just so important for like,
Sure.
hey, here's what's up. And it's a very important part, I think, in both cases.
Yeah, I would argue that your character still has an effect on Boyd in season 2. We see hints of that throughout the season.
Yeah, I think so. I think that Frank's character in From really does serve as sort of an inciting incident, which is it's not the only thing, but I think it's one of the main things that happens that leads some people to question, well, what are we all about? We've been going strong for a little while, but we haven't been tested. And so now we're being tested. Everything has changed. What do we do? And Frank, Frank doesn't make it easy, and it is one of the things that I kind of like about that character is that he at first blush it should be easy to just follow through with what it is that what the consequences that have been laid out for people in the town is going to be, but then he turns around, he makes it hard. He's a human being, and he didn't choose to be here, just the same as no one else chose to be in this little village of Lost. And they're Lost. Listen to me. I'm so close to it was a big deal for me to be on that show because I was a big fan of Lost
Yeah.
years ago, and so getting to be there with Harold Perrineau. So obviously there are some obvious parallels, but yeah, I think it really, him in particular, Boyd in particular, I think has to go through a little thing where he questions um do these consequences and do these fine lines in the sand make sense in
Right.
context?
I don't think he ever expected to actually have to follow through with it.
No, I don't think so. Yeah.
It's similar to like, being a parent, and you set these consequences, and then you have to actually follow through, when it comes time to use them.
Well, since we're
Yeah,
on this
that's right.
topic, do you think that Frank belongs in the box or belonged in the box?
Yeah, I mean it's a good question. I mean the operative word there is deserve, right? So, there's certainly I've heard it mentioned a couple of times, and people have certainly said this to me, that there is something odd about having capital punishment be the consequence of making a mistake or being negligent or being careless in a
Mhm.
place where the natural consequences of making a mistake or being careless is probably death anyway,
Right.
Right.
right? That maybe you don't need it's like saying to a bunch of kids on a boat, don't punch holes in the boat or else we're not going to give you dinner. Well, I mean, not giving you dinner becomes moot if the boat is sinking. So I mean, I mean, it certainly does give a lot of weight to it creates a lot of tension, and again, I think it lends a lot of weight to the suggestion that probably the main challenge that people have in that place is there any hope to be had? Do you hang on to it or do you let go of it? And what is the obligation that everyone around you has to sort of hold you up? If you've let go and you're becoming careless, I think it's pretty clear from the very beginning that Frank has sort of already let go.
Right.
Right. And so what happens naturally after that is fairly predictable. Whereas, there's another character later on in season one, and I think we're probably far along in it now that we don't have to worry about spoiling it for anyone. But my friend Sam plays a character who takes his own life
Mm.
Oh,
in
Yep.
yes. Yep.
yeah, later on in the show. And I think there's an interesting parallel there where for Frank putting himself in the box and letting happen what he knows is going to happen, what everyone knows is going to happen, is in a weird way almost his last act of agency, right? It's his last act of hope. It's kind of a shitty one in the sense that it forces Boyd to have to clean up the mess the next day. And,
Hmm.
and Harold and I talked about that when we were filming. It was like, this is kind of a hero's out in a way for Frank, and saves poor Boyd from having to make the decision of whether to put him in the box or not. But then Boyd has to clean it up, so that kind of sucks.
Yeah.
But the parallel against this other character that my friend Sam plays is that I would think that you'd see a lot more of that. I think the biggest enemy to the people in that town would probably be loss of hope, I would
Oh,
imagine.
sure.
Yeah, so we see a little arc early on, I think, where that plays out. And it was fun to get to be a part of that.
Yeah.
What do you think? Do you think that Reed, well, not Reed, Tom should
Yeah.
have maybe done more to get you to go home on that night?
Oh, that's a great question. So
We asked Reed that question.
yeah, so I have in one of my other lives, I have some legal training, and we did have a number of conversations as to whether social host liability should apply. Bartenders are typically not permitted to let a patron who's drank too much walk away, especially if they think they're going to drive. There is some obligation to intervene. And we had some kind of facetious, I guess, jets about whether Tom had any obligation there. I mean, under the circumstances, given that it was getting dark, I think he did the right thing by keeping him inside. I think that makes the most sense. Probably the other question that one could ask is whether Frank's poor wife should have done more to secure the house, right? Whether,
Right.
and which leads me to wonder, how long have they been there? I mean, I'm not. Someone else asked me that in a different interview, and it's a good question. I think they've been long enough to become part of the community. They've been there long enough for poor Frank to lose hope, but at the same time, I don't think they've been there quite long enough to have settled into the things they have to do to keep the place secure. It's a little bit of a tough call, but no, I think Tom's off the hook. I never really felt that Tom was all that responsible for what happened to poor Frank. Yeah.
Mm. But do you think that Frank is responsible for their deaths in as far as the fact that he didn't come home that night? Like, do you think that's the reason that that was the night that somebody came in? Or,
I mean,
is it simply the fact that you never nailed the window shut and it could have happened when all three of them were home?
yeah, I mean that's a great question. I'm not much of a black and white thinker when it comes to these kinds of things. I think if you it's like saying to someone who lives in a place where there are hurricanes every hurricane season that they're responsible for whatever happens simply by choosing to live there, that they could get up and go somewhere else. Well, anyone who's lived anywhere and has set down roots anywhere knows that it's not quite that simple.
Right.
Right. So I think if you've been trapped in a place where at night creatures come out and they actively tempt you to let them in or to come out, I think there are certain inevitabilities built into that. In fact, I think that one of the things that season one kind of bears out is that it is far more dangerous to live in Colony House
Mm.
than it is to live in the houses. I mean, if you're living in the houses, you only have a couple of people to watch out for, and you only have a couple of windows. I mean, the more people you have living in a place where those dangers are outside, you're only ever as safe as the most susceptible or weakest or most careless person in the
Right.
house, right? And that always seemed to me to be something that was a little that really did reveal the sort of inherent danger of the whole thing, almost to the point where I'm not even sure you could ever hold anyone responsible for what is going to inevitably happen over time. Someone's going to forget to lock a window. Someone's going to leave a door ajar. Someone's going to screw up eventually. It's just an inevitability. So yeah, I in that sense, I think Frank was responsible, but also not at the same time. I would imagine there'd be more of a community element to keep the place locked up. But it works as a metaphor. I mean, I think it's quite an elegant story, and I think it works out pretty well as a kind of investigation, a thought experiment into what people might do if they were trapped in a scenario like this. Yeah, but I was always kind of easy on Frank. I think I'm supposed to be as the guy who plays him.
Right.
Yeah.
So actually, I'm curious. Do you always take your character's side? Or
Yes.
Mm.
Yeah, I think so. And I'm of the view that people should. And I use the word should very lightly there. I don't I think I take I take Frank's side, I think, for the same reason, and pretty much all the characters that I play, I take their side for the same reason why I think this is a theory. I think that everybody takes their own side in a real lived experience kind of way. That's not to say that people don't sometimes go, "Wow, I'm being a real shithead here," or "Oh, I'm being a jerk," or I'm being evil or whatever. But I think when you step back from that a little bit, I do believe that everybody, just as a sort of a basic character principle, I believe that everybody acts rationally, that everybody does what they do with a belief that it is the right thing for them to do, and that there's something sensible and rational to be gained, even if everybody else on the outside looks at it and goes, well, that's irrational, it doesn't make sense what that person is doing, that's not serving their best interest. The person believes that it is, or they're being driven by something that feels very normal and rational to them. Now, obviously that's debatable, but I always feel like that's the starting point of playing a character that is real. And I think that's particularly true of characters who are maybe have some failings or some weaknesses, or even characters that are quote unquote bad, if that's the way that you want to put it. I think that playing those characters without a commitment to what that character's rational decision-making process is going to end up being a cartoonish portrayal if you don't do that. It's just going to be kind of silly and goofy. And I think we've all seen examples of that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Boyd gave Frank the opportunity. He said, "I'm not going to make you go in the box. You can be exiled instead."
Yeah.
And like you said, Frank, took the agency to make that decision and to go in the box. If you put yourself in that scenario, if your family had just died, you're facing this situation, would you have made the same decision? Do you think you would have put yourself in the box, or would you have gone and lived in that shed happily ever after?
Well, in
Not
a
only
way,
that, uh,
no, go ahead, Dave. Go ahead.
yeah, I'm like, not just put yourself in the box, but like if you want to die, why would you choose that method? Because there's definitely different ways in which you could die that's not quite as terrifying as that. There's other
Yeah.
methods to kill yourself, basically, that you could
Yeah.
choose to do. So why would you choose to go in the box rather than something that's
I think there's some element of there's a lot of ways of dissecting it, I think. For example, um, you used an interesting expression there. You said live happily ever after in the shack in the woods. I'm not so sure that that would be that great of an existence. I certainly wouldn't want to do that. But that's number one. Number two, though, like you're right. There are other ways to go, but I think that where Frank's concerned, I think it's his way of joining the community at the end. So the community has this rule. And so yeah, I mean I think he probably even knows on some level that going out and living in that shack is probably going to end up leading to his death anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's an alcoholic, first of all. So, if he's being excommunicated from town, he's going to go out and live in this shack. He's going to have a rough go of it. I don't know what he's going to eat or what's he going to do. So I think a reasonable person would sit down and go, okay, well, that's not good. That's going to be bad, right? I'm probably only going to last a little while,
Right.
in all likelihood. But I don't think the sort of method of death, again, setting aside the difficult business of knowing that Boyd would have to clean it up the next day. That sucks. But setting that aside, I do think that it's Frank's way of saying, I'm probably going to go anyway. I think I'm at the end of this. I can't stay here any longer. I've lost hope. But I am at the very end going to atone to the rules of the place. And the rule says you go in the box, and I messed up and I lost my family. I want to join them. I want to see them, and I want to play by the rules of the place. I don't want a way out. I don't want an escape from this. So I don't think he'd be able to live with himself, right? I think to me that's the more interesting character driven way of understanding that guy's choice at the end of the day. I mean, is that borne out in the dialogue or in the plot or well, I mean, in a way that's for the audience to decide whether they're sold on what they've seen, whether they're convinced that this guy that they're watching, because honestly, I don't want to go off on a tangent here, but that is the tough part of it, right? Like the question of these characters is not whether you would do the same thing or whether a person would do what this person is doing. The job of the show is to persuade you, the audience, that this person you're watching would do this, that they are choosing this and they're rationally choosing this, right? And so I tried to do that as best I could, but depends on who the viewer is, I guess. That's
Were
my short answer.
were you on set at all when they were doing episode 4, the cleanup after the box, or?
Oh yeah, that was me. Yeah, that was me in the yeah. So I had all the prosthetics put on, and I had blood put all over me, and I got to be all sticky and stand outside in the heat with the bugs and stuff for half the day. And they constructed the destroyed version of the box, and they actually put me in there, and they used some practical and also some special effects and in post to basically remove parts of my body and my arms and stuff, but the head part and the upper torso, that's actually me sitting there. And when Boyd puts the blanket over Frank's fate, that he
Yeah.
was putting that over my actual face in the thing. And I'm fairly certain they did the same thing for Reed. I think when Reed gets toasted in season 2, they
Mhm.
put him they had him like half in the ground or something like that. And the show's been good to do that. In episode 1, when I discover my family destroyed in the room, which was the first day of shooting, which was my first day on set. That scene of being dragged up the stairs and thrown up against the wall, with one of my TV heroes, and then being shown my dead family. That was day 1, and no one knew really if this was going to work or if it was going to be hokey or silly or whatever. But my friend Anne, who plays my wife in the show, they built her into the bed. So it looks like she's been torn apart from the waist down, but the top of her is actually Anne, all covered with prosthetic gashes and stuff like that. So yeah, you pretty much get to be there for all of it, because the show tries very hard to do things practically whenever possible, which I think makes it a really neat and compelling viewing experience.
Wow.
Yeah,
Was that fun to do? Like the whole I'm sitting here dead, not moving bit?
it's the
Uh,
best. Yeah. It's the best. And it's not, you think it's straightforward, but there are a whole bunch of different ways to play dead.
mhm.
And so, thankfully, and you go into these things, these big productions with, very big professional crews and a director, and time is of the essence stuff. You never really know how much experimenting you're going to get to do, right? Because maybe someone already has an idea of what it's supposed to be or whatever. But I actually I got to play around a little bit. I got to do the whole dead with eyes open, dead with eyes closed, mouth open, limp as a bonefish, or, rigor mortis kind of frozen in place, and a whole bunch of different versions of it to try to get a sense of, well, what plays best on camera. And yeah, it's fun. It's tricky to do because you don't know what it looks like while you're doing it, and you don't want it to be silly. But no, I had a great time. The whole thing was great, frankly. It was every bit of it was just, yeah, absolute TV fantasy camp. It was a lot of fun.
Any chance of your return to From in ghost
Oh,
form, like your friend Reed?
yeah, people ask me that. I don't know. I have no idea. Yeah, I really truly have no clue. They've sort of set a precedent, both
Mhm.
in flashback form and in Star Wars Force Ghost hallucination form. But
Right.
no, I don't know. And honestly, I don't have strong feelings about it. I think that, like you said, the character is one that serves as a bit of an inciting incident moment, in addition to the new family showing up. There's really those two things that kind of collide together. But yeah, to me, I certainly wouldn't want a plot to happen for charity. For me, I think it would have to make sense
Right.
for the show or whatever story they're trying to tell. But I'd happily appear if that was what I was asked to do. But yeah, I can't off the top of my head think of a reason why, other than to shoehorn a reason in just for fun,
Well,
from a fan perspective.
anything seems possible in From, right? I mean, you could be the mastermind behind the whole thing for all we know.
Really, really, truly. And season two really, I mean, people sometimes think that the actors involved know things about the show. We really don't. Like, there
Yeah.
really is a need to know basis kind of thing. And I watched season 2 with as much bewildered amazement as everyone else, kind of going, Now we got a ballerina monster? Like, what is happening now? What is this show? Like, what are these bugs all about? Like, what's the I had a lot of fun. I really, really loved it. But it really is a mystery that keeps adding layers. And
Sure, yeah.
just hope they have
They pull it
a
off.
yeah, yeah, that's right. I hope Mike has an exit strategy, that we're gonna see our way through it. Yeah.
So if they were to ask you to come back and play Frank again, do you think you personally would rather it be in a flashback where we're, learning more about the history of the town and Frank's there? Or do you think you'd like to play that entity character that, is in someone's head or whatever they are?
Yeah, so I have a very, very easy answer to that question. I 99 times out of 100, I would want it to be a flashback. Because if it's a flashback, you're playing a character.
Hmm.
If it's a hallucination, you're not actually playing a character. You still get to be there. You still have a job to do. You're still doing something, but in a meaningful sense, in a substantive kind of sense, you're playing an aspect of your scene partner's psyche. And
Hmm.
not that that's not interesting. I once played a role in a movie where I was it was like an independent feature, and I played the physical like personification of the other person's depression. So I was just there with him most of the time, talking into his ear, making him feel crappy about himself. But even then, like what informed my understanding of the character was trying to think about his life and what bothered him and what, it's still the same exercise, but I would rather play an actual real human character every time, because I do think that the hallucinating somebody in a dream or in real life is a bit of a narrative trick. It's not, I don't think it's terribly relatable. I don't think it's something that very many of us experience, if any of us, arguably. So yeah, I would rather it be a flashback. I think that would be I would be interested in seeing what this guy looked like when he first showed up. Was he already a drinker? Was he, did he have more hope? Was, what kind of leadership role did he take in his family? Were they equal partners, and then he kind of fell off the edge of the earth? Those are interesting questions to me. I like thinking about those things.
Sure. So, as a fan of the show, do you have
Yeah.
any favorite theories, directions you're leaning that you'd like to see what's going on? Or
Man, I don't
there's
know.
so many out there.
I've gotten into some fights, with people. I'm very much I can be infuriating about this because it's fun to theorize, and that's part of the
Mhm.
fun of the show, to go, what's going on here? And I lived through Lost and a number of other shows like that as a viewer, kind of going, maybe it's this, maybe it's
Right.
that, and all that. But I'm a much bigger fan of watching the action and going, well, what do I think is the sensible arc of these different characters? What has been set up? What have we been led to believe is the journey that these people are taking? And are we going to be surprised? Is it going to play out the way we think it is? Are there some characters who are less important than others? Um, to me, the question of what's actually happening in the town is I tend to find that the imagination of the viewer takes you to places that the storyteller is probably never going to go to. There's one big theory that has never made sense to me, if we really wanted to get into it, that I
Sure.
have I have thrown down
Sure.
with some other podcast interviewers, and that's this idea that there's a mole.
Hmm.
Oh, I don't really like that
I
idea.
don't like that idea either.
I've
I
never
don't
bought it.
I don't think it makes any sense. Like, why they're already living in this fishbowl where the creatures seem to have this sort of otherworldly oversight over them, and there's voices and there's sound. Why do you need why do you need a spy? What possible import would that have? And I have found that most of the theories about the mole presuppose that there is one. Like that's what makes the which one of these people is a mole. That's
Right.
what makes that debate interesting, is that you presuppose there is one. You assume there's a mole, and then we have a debate over which person it is. Whereas I think it's a faulty place to start. I think all of these people are I may prove to be wrong. They may throw us a curveball, but I think all those people are earnestly there.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So, do you think Tabitha made it into the real world at the end of season two,
Oh,
or do you think
so
it's
so
something else?
cool, eh? So cool. I I think she did. I think she did. I think there are a few things going on there that suggest that she did. Um, Maybe the more interesting question is when, and where, and is it easy to figure out where you are. And from a narrative perspective, I tend to think that this might be where the show is taking us, that it would be fun to kind of show us some parallels. If you're lost in a town you can't get out of because it's magical and because there are zombie vampires that come out in the middle of the night, that's only slightly more fantastical than being lost in a town where you don't know where you are in real life and you don't know how you're going to get out and no way of communicating with people, which seems foreign to us now that we all walk around with space age technology in our pockets and we can geolocate ourselves anywhere on Earth. But setting that aside, like before that, you could basically get plopped down into the middle of a town and go, well, I don't know where I am. I don't know where this is. I may not even know what country it is. And how am I going to get home? How do I get out of here? It might kind of turn out to feel and look very similar. So I'm really interested to see what happens with Tabitha. I think she's in the real world. I think she's in a real place.
Okay.
I think that's more interesting, but who knows?
Who knows?
Yeah.
And like you said, we could all be so way off about everything that we still have no idea what's to come.
No clue.
Absolutely.
No clue. Oh boy. Yeah, it's just some of it's guessing. I do get a kick out of seeing some of the theories in some of the groups online because some of them just seem like wild stabs in the dark where the implication of some of their theories are so far reaching that the show probably wouldn't be able to support the weight of it. It just yeah, it's really interesting to see what people come up with.
Yeah, it's kind of a crazy one.
Definitely.
Where you could spend you could spend as much time as you wanted, like analyzing every little second of this show and come up with like 1,000 different ideas.
And we definitely have
We
done
have done some of that,
I bet you have, and I will say that being a member of this community, there is definitely a fair bit of kind of fun to be had. When you're involved in making the show, and how the shows are put together, you get a sense that putting together a television show is not the same as constructing an escape room, where you're putting little hints and you're putting little marks on walls or hieroglyphics or runes or things around to be read and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, in a show, you're trying to get your shots and you're trying to make your day, and the actors are trying to get through their lines and they're saying their lines differently from one take to the next,
Right.
not knowing which one is actually going to make it into the cut, and no one is whispering into their ear saying, on the fourth take, we want you to say your line this way because we want to subtly suggest to the audience that you may not be who you think or who they think you are. And that's the take we're going to use. All the other ones are junk. We want to have some subtle stuff. Nobody is doing that. Like,
Right.
that's not happening. Like, everybody is earnestly delivering their lines in the characters that they are. And so then when you step back and you see the show and watching people analyze it, right down to the frame, right down to set decoration, or right down to what's this object over here, and you're part of this community that puts these shows together, you're like, wow, if only we had the time and the resources to put that much thought into the placement of things and stuff. And I mean, that sounds like a bit of a party pooper kind of thing to share, but to me, it does mean that when something appears on screen or in a frame that does matter, it's deliberate, and it absolutely matters. It's worth watching for because I think there are clues, but some of the minute little things that people see just
Not
they
everything
blow me away. Yeah, they blow me away. It's like, wow, you've never worked on a TV show before, have you? We don't get down to this level of detail. We just don't. Yeah.
So is there you said you were a fan of Harold's, and I imagine that was amazing to get to work with him.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah.
Was there anyone that you didn't get a chance to have a scene with that you would like to work with from?
I think the only person I think really I got to meet everyone. One of the neat things about one of the scenes that I shot was the choosing day scene, where Julie chooses to go to Colony House and it's all dramatic and stuff. And then Frank shows up Ghost of Christmas Past style, and says, "Hey, I want to go in the box." That was the first day of shooting in season 1 that everyone was together. So prior to that, there were a few little things here and there, but everyone had shot their things separately. And this was the first kind of group, kind of everyone gathered in the same place. And it was neat to get to be there because I got to meet everybody. But I would say probably the one person that I didn't get to meet at all, and I would have loved to have shared a scene with would be Victor. It would be Scott. Like I just think he's a very elegant actor. I think he's a very cool guy by all accounts, and I've seen some of his interviews and had a couple little exchanges with him online. But he just, yeah, I would have loved to have had some time with them. But I got a little bit. I was on, I think 6 or 7 days of shooting altogether. But I did get to spend little chunks of time with people and just chat with them and get to know them, and then shuffle off and let them get on with their work. And there are other people on the show that I'm good friends with, and I've worked with extensively on some other things, and I know quite well. But yeah, it's Scott would be the main person that I really wish that I'd maybe at least gotten to meet and chat with and spend a bit more time with. Yeah. It's a
It's funny
character too. Cool character. Very cool character.
Yeah.
What's funny about that choosing day ceremony we were just talking about? You have this big emotional speech, and then Jade comes in and basically undermines it.
Yeah, yeah. And we had fun with that. He's a neat guy. Like I said, I would have loved to have done something with Scott McCord, but David Alpe is a neat, he's a neat guy too, and he's a fun actor to watch. And I would say I would say that you really feel it when you're playing a scene where the other actor or actors give something that makes your job easy. And when it came to David in that one scene, I didn't have to manufacture annoyance or the crestfallen feeling. I had this feeling that Frank had more to say, and that there was maybe a little bit more to the moment that he was sharing with Boyd. And then this jackass pipes up and just sort of sucks the air out of the clearing, and I felt it. He does it so well, and in those early stretches, he just plays this, such a great shit disturber and doubter and non-believer. I think it's probably one of the best performances of the first season, is that little journey that he goes through, from thinking the whole thing's about him and revolves around him, to realizing that it's not, and that he's stuck there like everyone else. I found that a joy to watch, and getting to be there with him and be part of it was pretty fun.
Right.
Should we move on to some Sullivan's Crossing?
Yeah,
questions?
we don't want to keep you too long, so we should probably talk about Sullivan's Crossing a little bit.
Wow.
Obviously a much lighter show.
Yeah.
Less death and dismemberment in that one.
Yeah. But poor Bob, again, it's the I guess white collar fraud equivalent of being put in the box, being arrested by the FBI and hauled off in handcuffs. That was a neat
what was that scene like? You're at this like gala and being arrested. Was that fun? I imagine that's a fun one.
It's fun again, because you don't, again, I would point to that as another example where you don't have to manufacture the energy, right? It's a room full of people. It was real. It was at night, the energy was high. The speech actually gets interrupted by FBI. We did a whole bunch of takes of it, and I was seated at an angle where I was watching her on stage and listening to her give this speech, and I didn't have to pretend that I was distracted by a commotion behind me. I actually was, and getting to play off of her energy, and you hear the noise build and turning around, and it's chaos, and it's a little bit of confusion. You didn't have to make it up when you've got that many people in a scene and everybody's doing their best to do their own little part. It adds up to something that can be quite easy to just kind of ride ride the tide of. Yeah, but it was it was neat. It was a neat little scene to shoot. It was a lot of business to it, but it was I quite enjoyed that. I quite enjoyed that scene. I thought that was great.
What's interesting about Bob is that, he's clearly someone who's done some shady stuff. He's in some trouble for practices that are not good,
Yeah.
but the character does not come off as evil. He's
No, and it's an interesting thing. You sometimes don't really know. Sometimes the thing with some of these shows, you don't know what the full arc of the character is, right? You're not completely certain where the whole thing is going when you start. You might, but you don't always know. And so again, that's where I go back to, okay, well, what do I know about this person? What does the script tell me? What does the story that I know of tell me so far? And to me, I just thought playing him as a confident, proud, um, really into this part of it, really into the, oh, here's my protege, this is my little world, and here are my people, and hobnobbing with all these important private sector surgeons and doctors and stuff. That to me that's the more sellable and persuasive angle of a character. I think we would be hard pressed to name people who are walking around being evil, right? Like they're just not. Even some of the worst people maybe you can think of, they're not. You may not like them, you may find them unsavory, but they're not walking around going, like it's not like Inspector Gadget, or anything like that. It's a much more lived in real world type thing, and it is a subtle show. It's not supposed to have, I think, bang you over the head overtones. So yeah, I found it pretty easily reconcilable to play this guy who's just like, oh well, this is what you do.
Mhm.
This is what people do in this business to stay ahead and to maintain profits, and to, I mean, that's cynical, but I think maybe he would believe that, not even necessarily think he was doing anything wrong.
Yeah, and it feels really evident that he cares about Maggie.
Yeah.
Um, Bob spends the whole season just trying to get her to give him 2 seconds to tell her what he wants to tell her.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if he
Falling
didn't care, he wouldn't keep trying, right?
yeah, falling short of popping out of the bushes down by the beach at Sullivan's Crossing, just saying, Maggie, I have something very important to tell you. If you just stop, for 1 second. But the it's interesting that, I mean, that last scene that we shot in the last episode, there was a little bit more to it as scripted, and I give Morgan a lot of credit. Morgan's very, very good at looking at a scene and knowing what it is her job is, and knowing what she has to do, and going, I think I think Maggie would cut to the chase faster than this. Maggie wouldn't give Bob um this much leeway or this much roadway to build up to the point he's trying to make. She wouldn't stand there and debate him. She's just so disgusted by him and what she believes that he's done, that she would just walk away. There's nothing to keep her there, right? So we're working through those scenes, even some of the phone call ones, working through those scenes, it's like, okay, we always have to be trying to battle against this efficiency that she's going to seize in just trying to get away from this guy and not give him a chance to talk, and just not want to have anything to do with him. So that was always kind of present in all of those little bits. And it was fun. It was fun to play with. We had a good time doing that.
You sort of just answered this question, but
Uh,
what was it like to work with Morgan Cohan?
Oh, she's great. Yeah, she's fun. She's very focused, very hard worker. My God, she's a lot of heavy lifting to do on this show. She's got a lot to do. And even the sort of the B plots of the show don't really sit there very long before going back to her. So, every episode she's got a lot to do, and she worked hard and really carried the weight of being number one in that. And you see how good she is on screen. You see her chemistry's great with everybody, and the discomfort. One of the things I like most about her portrayal is that there is so much tension and discomfort in her presence in that place. It doesn't fall prey to, I mean, I don't want to use this as a pejorative, but like the sort of Hallmark sort of trope where, girl goes home, or goes home to a small town, she's made it big in the city, and now she's faced with the parts of her old life that she's uncomfortable with, but she's not as uncomfortable as maybe you'd think she would be, because it's got to be kind of light and bubbly. Morgan just sort of dispensed with that energy altogether, and I thought she discharged that really, really well. And I felt it watching it. I felt kind of uncomfortable. I was like, I wouldn't want to, like, she's clearly, this is a refuge for her, but there's a lot of ghosts wandering around that she's uncomfortable with. And I thought that really came through. I was quite impressed at how well that bubbled to the surface. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I had something else, but I lost it.
Oh, I go on too long sometimes.
Oh, you're fine. You're
too many
fine.
thoughts about too many things.
So, kind of the same question I asked you for From. Is there anyone on Sullivan's Crossing that you'd love to share a scene with? I mean,
Oh, big.
obviously we've only seen season one, and who knows what happens in season two besides you.
Yeah.
But we've only seen Bob. He's in Boston.
Yeah.
It would
Well,
be fun if Bob went to visit Sullivan's Crossing. Like,
Met up with your old buddy Reed
right.
Price.
Anything that
this is
you'd
it.
like
Yeah.
to see.
I
I'm
mean, it
sorry.
is. Yeah, it's an interesting thing watching that show and going, well, okay, well, I'm relegated to the Boston parts, which was Halifax. The last scenes, the final scenes we shot in Ottawa, in the last episode, which was interesting. So, I got to share scenes with Morgan, and I got to have some fun on set with Peter Outerbridge, who plays her stepdad, and Lydia Boyd, I was in a movie with Lydia before, even though we didn't share any scenes together. But a few years ago, we were in a movie, and a few other friends of mine got to do things with them. Alan or yeah, some of the different people who show up during the party scene at the beginning. There's a number of people there, but I didn't get to have any scenes or do anything at the actual Sullivan's Crossing.
Right.
None of the folks in that place. And I've got some friends, Reed and I have worked on a zillion things together and have known each other for a long time. It was interesting being on a show together and not do anything at the same time with each other. That's an interesting experience, which was a little different. And yeah, there were a bunch of people I would have loved to I would have loved to have had some time with. Obviously Sully himself, would have been neat. It would have been neat to do some things with Chad Michael Murray and get to meet some different folks. Everybody's wonderful and very nice by all accounts. But you show up and you do the stuff that you're there to do, and you get to enjoy the rest of it like a member of the audience. And so, there it
Did you
is.
get to like meet any of them, or hang out just when other things were happening on set at all?
No, not really. Like the two sets, I guess, if you can call them that, um, really never, for me anyway, really never overlapped.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, there's the stuff that goes on at the location itself, Sullivan's Crossing, which is, for us here in Halifax, was out in Beaverbank and in a couple of other locations. And all the stuff that happened in Boston was basically downtown Halifax, and like I said, one day in Ottawa. So even geographically, there really wasn't much of an overlap between the locations. So no, you really didn't get to cross paths with anybody. The big ballroom scene is sort of the closest that you got in the Boston setting to having a whole bunch of people in one place, but that's about it. Other than the trial, I guess, and I really didn't, for her trial at the end, I wasn't there for that. So it was a lot of fun watching it. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite role of all the roles that you played?
Oh boy. I mean I am fond of Frank. I mean Frank's a lot of fun. I will say I play a lawyer on the show that we've made called King and Pawn that I quite love, and it's a comedic role, and I've also written a bunch for the show, written a number of episodes, and that's just a wild romp of a comedic bunch of silliness. And I'd say I probably enjoy playing that one more than anyone. It's very, very close to my heart. But as far as some of the bigger stuff goes, Frank I've really enjoyed. I played a little character on in a Hallmark movie back in the fall that played in December, or maybe it was November, for Hallmark. Called Secret Gifts of Christmas. And it was just one scene, but I really loved that little character, just sort of a neurotic divorcee who's not ready to be dating, but is dating anyway. And that was a lot of fun. Yeah, I'm not sure I could pick a favorite. They're also different, but I've certainly had a great time doing it. The experiences are excellent. I've met a lot of cool people doing it too. It's a neat thing to get to do regularly. It's a real privilege. Yeah.
Did you know Reed Price prior to all these roles and performances, or did you meet him before?
No, we met. I can't remember
Actually, I just
when. Yeah, but no, it was through. So probably my main collaborative partner in the film community is a guy named Taylor Olson, and he and I've
That's
written
that
together and acted in
sounds
things
familiar.
together. Yeah, you've probably heard his name, but like we've acted and done a whole bunch of things together. We've developed things. We wrote together for King of Pawn, and I've written a series of shorts that I acted in that he directed and things like that. And Reed was in one of those. There was one of them's about a wedding, and Reed is the officiant at the wedding. And it's a small community. We tend to have the same people involved. But I think the first time I met Reed was while we were making a short film that another friend of ours was directing, and Taylor was in it and was producing it. And I played a role, and Reed played a role. And I think that was in a weird way, it really wasn't all that long ago. I think it was 2019. Which is kind of shocking when I think about how long it feels that Reed and I have been in a bunch of the same things together. A couple of different, three or four different series, and a couple of films and some short films. And I shot some scenes for a feature last year called Sharp Corner. Reed is also in another scene in that film, and yeah, we've just had a whole bunch of crossover all over the place. But so it feels like longer than 5 years. But don't tell Reed that I said that, because he'll probably figure out a way to turn that into me insulting him somehow. So it's sensitive.
So
So
how did you get involved in acting? So it sounds like you're fairly new to the acting scene, not something
well,
you've been doing your whole life.
it doesn't. I don't feel new. I mean, I did a lot of theater when I was in high
Okay.
school and when I was in university. And then I kind of pulled away. I wrote some things, and I mounted a couple of plays and things like that, independent productions. And then I found myself in a place where I was starting a family. That would have been around, I guess, 1999, 2000. And I stepped back from it altogether. And I ended up going to law school,
Oh
and
wow.
I did a master's degree, and I practiced law for a small handful of years, about 6 years. And then I left private practice and got a job at a university here in Halifax. And that sort of opened up time for me that I didn't have available to me. And my kids were starting to get a little bit bigger. And I had an opportunity to be in I wasn't a member of the union. This was around 2010. I had an opportunity to be in a web series, which was a very new concept at the
Mhm.
time. So I got cast. I just responded to a thing. I entered this little video contest, and I won, and I got a chance to audition, and I got to be in this show, and we did 2 seasons, and sort of back-to-back seasons in 2010 and 2012. And then after that, I did some small community college films and some other short films with some people that I really enjoyed working with. I got to be a wrestler, and I got to do a whole bunch of cool stuff. And then someone suggested, that there's other stuff. Why don't you go talk to one of the agents in town? So I reached out, and and got some representation. It was very shortly after that that I auditioned for a role in Haven, the Stephen King adaptation that shot on the South Shore for a number of years here, and I got a role in that. And then after that, it just sort of ran away with it. I got to do Mr. D and Trailer Park Boys. I got to be the arresting officer on one of the seasons of Trailer Park Boys, and I got to do, a whole bunch of neat stuff, some independent films and TV. And right now at this point, it feels like it feels like I've been doing it for a long time. But I guess it's really only been in the last 4 years or so that it's really, really picked up. And I find every year I'm doing 5, 6, or 7 projects and writing over here and composing music for this over there. And so it's definitely built up capacity and takes up a great deal of my time. But I've been doing it now for a good 15 years. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have anything else in the works right now that we should be looking forward to, or?
Yeah, I mean, who knows if you get to see these things, but I definitely do have, yeah, I mean, I Thursday, I'm shooting a scene in a film that's shooting here in Halifax called Dancing on Elephants, which is an adaptation of a play about a couple of senior women who are in an old folks home. And that's sort of set in Cape Breton here in Nova Scotia. So I'm doing that. I'm acting in the second season of another Bell series, regional series called Good Grief, about a grief group that works in a drag bar.
Yeah, I've heard of that one.
Yeah, we tried to actually see if we could watch that.
Yeah, so would I be right that maybe you've sat down and chatted with Katarina? Would I be right?
We have not, but we
We haven't. Okay.
do so. Yeah.
Yeah, she plays the lead in that
Yes,
show.
yes.
She's also one of the producers and writers, and I did some story editing for them this season, and I reprised my role in that. So we're going to do that over a few weeks, starting next week. We're doing a table read of season 2 on Friday, and then there are a couple of other small independent projects that I've been cast in. A couple of short films that are really interesting. One of them is probably one of the craziest shorts that I've ever been involved with, and I'm not sure how they're going to pull it off, but it's crazy fun. It's got some special effects and demonic type stuff, and it's a comedy, which is very close to my heart. So I get to do that. I may be doing another Hallmark film at some point in the near future. And then my friend Taylor and I have another project lined up that will either be in the summer or in the fall. And so that's going on. And I've got stand-up comedy. I'm doing shows and things like that every now and again. And then probably doing some, at some point I'll get the sort of picture locks of King and Pawn season 3, and I'll have to sit down at my keyboard and my computer and score another season of King and Pawn. So it's going to be a busy year. I've got a lot ahead of me over the next little while for sure. And then who knows what else comes up. I mean, there'll be other things for sure that'll pop up maybe later into the summer. Yeah.
Great.
All right. Do we have anything else?
I don't think I have any more questions.
Answered all your questions. Well, I'm glad. Satisfied customers. Yeah. How many shows do you guys do? Like what's the you do this, you do From? Well, I know you do Quantum Leap. I know that I've seen that.
Yeah, we do Quantum Leap, both the classic series and the revival.
Love it. Scott Bakula. Yeah.
From, of course, Sullivan's Crossing. We are doing a sitcom, an NBC sitcom called Extended Family.
Okay. Yeah.
To cover that. Cool. And then it just kind of pick up to some old stuff where we were doing Stephen King's Under the Dome.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I never saw the show, but I read the book.
Yeah. Show's very different from the book.
Yeah. That was my impression. Mike, is it Mike Chiklis? Is that? Oh no, it's no, Mike Chiklis. It's what's his name from Breaking Bad?
Dean Norris.
Dean Norris. Yeah, that's right. I wanted to watch it, but I didn't get a chance to see it. But one of these days, I will sit down and watch it.
It's kind of one of those shows that goes completely off the rails in a way that we're kind of hoping Prom doesn't end up going.
Well, that's the thing, right? Like you kind of you hope it closes out cleanly, to get back to From. I mean, I again, just fingers crossed. Like you just got to have faith that they've got an exit strategy for it, right?
right now it's a criminally underrated show,
Mhm.
Yeah.
and it could be, depending on how it ends and where the story goes, an all-time great sci-fi series.
It could.
Or,
Yeah, it
or it could just
absolutely
be a
could.
merely good one. But
Yeah, it's got lots and lots of elements, the with all of these shows and all of these kinds of stories, right, is that, you hope they don't collapse under their own weight, right? Because if it gets built up into something that if the audience has too much time and gets whipped up into too much of a fervor, coming up with theories and explanations that are far wilder and more interesting, more dangerously, if they're more interesting than what the show ends up delivering, then it's a hard, it's like twirling your fork in the spaghetti for too long. Like eventually that ball of pasta just gets too big to fit in your mouth. Like you just can't do it. So yeah, I hope it narrows, but I would love to see it on for a long time. It would be neat if they got, 5 seasons, let's say, out of it. I think that
that's
would
what
be,
they want. I hear at least.
yeah, I think that would be a good
That's a good
stretch
run.
stretch of storytelling. Yeah. Probably not longer than that. Once you get longer than that, then you've had to wander into what, season season 6 of Lost when they go back in time or whatever, where it's just, it's kind of fun, but it's a detour that maybe the story didn't need, and is probably just eating up television time because they were made to do it, right? And
Right.
then again, you don't want to finish too short either, right? You don't want to have to speed up to wrap it all up like Game of Thrones or whatever, right? So yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
lots of examples of how not to do it.
So to recap the shows that we're talking about today for our viewers, if you want to catch up on From, seasons 1 and 2 are available on MGM Plus in the US, Paramount Plus in Canada. They are currently filming season 3. No, there is not a release date yet, because that's what everyone comes with next.
Yep, that's right.
Sullivan's Crossing season 2 airs in Canada sometime in April. We do not have a release date here in the US yet, but season 1 can be watched in the US on the CW. And let's see, King and Pawn you mentioned was Bell TV.
That's right. Yep, Bell
Yep.
5
So
is what it's
anybody in
called.
Canada can look for that there.
Yep, that's
And
right.
those of us down here will have to wait a little while longer.
Either wait a while longer or emigrate. One of the two. Yeah, whichever is most convenient.
All right.
All right. Well, Bob, it was certainly great to have you on the show. Definitely a great conversation. A lot of good things said. Yeah.
Great
Is there
meeting you
anything else?
both.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on.
Oh,
Thank you
thanks
so
for
much
coming
for
along.
joining us. And we look forward to seeing more of you on our screens in the future.
Wonderful. I hope so as well.
All right. Thank you.
Talk to you again.
See you later.
Take care, guys. Okay, bye.
All right. So that was our conversation with Bob Mann. Some good stuff, I
Some great
thought.
stuff.
Yeah.
It's wonderful, when we can talk to an actor that's been in multiple shows that we cover.
Absolutely. It's always fun
And
time.
we've been wanting to get Bob on the show for quite a while. We've had conversations going, and then it didn't happen until now. So I'm glad
Right.
we finally were able to catch up with him and get this on the air.
We even got some good sound bites from that question that I completely screwed up in asking, but my usual awkward self. But yeah, fun times. Yeah, so anything you want to say?
I think I covered it all already, talking about these shows, but stay tuned to Corman Productions as new news comes out about both From and Sullivan's Crossing. We will be covering all of the new episodes when they finally do air for us here in the US. I'm anticipating we're not going to see new From until the fall at the earliest. I know some people are hoping for the summer,
probably towards the end of the year.
but I'm thinking it'll be like October, maybe, if at all this year. It might not even happen
might be
until
like January of next year.
Yeah. So anybody who tells you there is a date, there is no date yet. It has not been announced when From season 3 will air, but I know they are filming it. They are hard at work in the very cold, snowy Nova Scotia film set, getting it done for us. So we have to be patient. And
I'm sure it'll be worth the wait.
It will be worth the wait. I'm positive. And again, for Sullivan's Crossing, it is airing in Canada. We do not have access to those episodes. So we will have to wait until it airs here in the US. So we will be on a delay again for season 2. Last we had spoken about it, we had seemed pretty confident that they were going to come at about the same time, but we were wrong.
That was our hope. That was our hope, but it didn't work out that way.
So once we get to see them, we will talk about them and share them with our audience. And in the meanwhile, we have lots of other content up on the channel. Quantum Leap, Extended Family, which is a great sitcom on NBC. So make sure you check out those playlists as well.
All right. We'd like to hear from you. What'd you think of our interview? What'd you think of the podcast in general? Stacie, we reached out.
I've reached on Twitter, X, Instagram, and Threads at TVN Coupon Talk.
If you like this video and want to support the channel, there are a number of ways to do so. You can follow me on Twitter at Core Productions. You can join my Core Productions Facebook page. You can buy something from the Core Productions store on Zazzle. You can buy me a coffee, which is a way to support content creators such as ourselves. And you can join the new Core Productions membership for 99 cents a month on YouTube. And of course, you can like, share, and comment on this video, as well as subscribing to our channel. This is Dave and Stacie from Core Productions, signing off.